Do you want to learn how you can set up continuous integration and deployment into your workflow in Serverless? In this video, that is exactly what I'm going to teach you how to do. Hi guys, my name is Sam with Complete Coding, where our aim is to make you into the best developer that you can be. In this episode, we're going to be looking at continuous integration and deployment. CI and CD, as it's short for, is where anytime you make a change in your code and you push it up to your change management provider, such as GitHub, then it will automatically be built and deployed. This is great as it means there is one way that you deploy your service. So if you have multiple people all working on the same project, you don't have people writing over each other's work, because to do that and have a deployment created, they need to merge it into one of the deployment branches. This is one of the big things that will come when you work at a company that uses serverless in a production environment. For this project, we're going to be using CircleCI, so we'll jump into their site now and look out how we get this all set up. And now we're going to have a look at CircleCI and how we're going to use it. CircleCI is a continuous integration software which has a free tier which we're going to be using and allows us to run our code whenever we push a change up to our source control, in this case GitHub. If you don't have a CircleCI account, you can sign up by connecting your GitHub account, and then you'll be taken to a home page. If you click on Add Project, or if this is a new account for you, then there'll be a prompt to add a new project. You'll be able to see all of your GitHub projects. For this one, I'm going to be using my Serverless YouTube series, and we need to click on Set Up the Project. What this does is it gives us a config file to start from that we can use inside our code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of the text inside here and then head over to our code so that we can start setting up the configuration. Inside here, we need to make a new folder, and that folder is going to be called .circleci, and we're going to cd into that folder. Inside here, we need to paste the config.yaml, so we're going to touch config.yaml, and now we can open up that file and paste in the code that we've just copied off the CircleCI site. Now that we are in here, we're going to make a couple of changes to the code in here so that it is able to deploy our application. The first thing that we're going to change is we're not going to call this build and test. We're going to call this build and deploy, as that is what we're going to be doing. Here it says that we're going to be executing it with node default, but we're actually going to change that to run inside Docker. So in here we need to change it to Docker, and then we have got an image which is CircleCI / node 10.16.3. We do this as Docker gives us some added functionality that we want to be able to use when we're doing these next steps. We can then delete this step here, and the steps are processes that are run to allow us to do everything that we need to deploy our code and integrate this continuously. The first thing it needs to do is it needs to check out the latest code inside your repo. After that, we need to run some commands. So this run takes a command, and what we need to do is we need to install a couple of things. We need to install Serverless, and we need to install npm globally. So sudo npm I -g for globally, and serverless, and npm at latest. After this, we need to do some more commands. So the second command that we're going to run is going to be an npm install, because we need to do that before we can deploy. After we've installed, we want to be getting ready to deploy. So we can run a command of SLS deploy. If we have a look inside our serverless YAML again, we also have this profile here. This is the profile that the serverless deployment will use for our AWS credentials. But as this is running in the cloud, we haven't set up those credentials. To do that, we need to add an extra command before this to get our credentials and set them up. We're going to do this as a separate run command. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a script called install credentials that we are about to create. To run a script, we just need to run it. So /. This is going to be in the CircleCI folder. So CircleCI / install credentials.sh. And I'm going to copy that file name and make that file inside CircleCI. So now we have that install credentials.sh. This is going to be executed here. So we actually want to make it executable. To do this in Linux or Mac, you have to do chmod +x to make it executable, and then the file name install credentials.sh. So now we've made that file executable, we can open it up and we can start adding some code in here so that it is creating the credentials for our serverless deployment. We can do this by running npx SLS config credentials and then a \. This allows us to go onto a new line, and now we need to set a provider of AWS, a profile, and this profile needs to be exactly the same as our serverless YAML file. So I'm going to copy that into here. As well as that, we then need to set the AWS key. And here we're going to be using environment variables. You could just paste in a key, but that means that when you commit it up, it will be publicly accessible if your GitHub repo is publicly accessible. You really don't want that, because that means other people can use your key and secret. So what we're going to do is we're going to put quote marks, and then $AWS underscore profile underscore key. And what this is going to do is this is going to use environment variable of AWS profile key and put it in this place. We can do the same thing with the secret. So it is $AWS underscore profile underscore secret. And now save this file. And when this command runs, it will be creating our serverless user with the key and the secret that we're going to store in CircleCI. And that will allow us, back in our config YAML, to run SLS deploy and for it to deploy to the correct account. So that is the job fully described, but now we can go down to workflow. Inside workflow, we want to change this again from build and test to build and deploy. We're then going to have one job called build and deploy, and this is going to have some configuration. It's going to have some context, and context is our way of attaching our environment variables, and I'm going to call this Serverless project. As well as the context, we only want to deploy this when a certain branch is pushed. This will help you if you have lots of different branches that you are pushing up to, but only actually want to deploy from a subset of them. For example, only from the dev, QA, pre-prod and prod branches, because you would have feature branches such as dev hyphen new endpoint. These you don't want to have a deployment every time that you push, so you can set a filter, and this filter is on branches, and we only want certain branches, and for us that's going to be L23-CI, because that is the branch that I'm in at the moment, but you need to change this value to the branches that you want to deploy. If you have multiple branches, use a new line and a hyphen to add those to the branches that will be deployed. I'm now going to save this, and I can go back over to our CircleCI instance so that we can set up those environment variables we talked about here. So now that we've created our serverless YouTube, we need to go into the settings and create a new set of contexts. So in here, I'm going to create context, and I'm actually going to copy it from our config YAML so that we get it right, and paste it in there. So now we have our serverless project context. In here, we can add in environment variables. So we're going to create a new environment variable. Again, head over to our code, our install credentials file, and copy AWS profile key and paste it in here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to AWS, head into our serverless course role, and head into IAM. At the very start of this whole YouTube series, we created a user called the serverless access. we're now going to create a new user for CI. So this is going to be called CircleCI user, and they are only going to have programmatic access. So now we can move on to the permissions, attach the administrator permissions, and hit next. There's no tags, so now we can create this user. Now that we've created our CircleCI user, we have an access key, which I can copy, head over to our serverless project environment variables, and paste in our key like that, and add that as an environment variable. We need to do the same thing with our AWS profile secret. So if I copy that, add this in, paste it, and now I'm going to head over to our manager. I'm going to do this, show my secret and paste it in, but I'm going to skip that so I don't expose my secrets. So now I've added those two, I have my profile key and my profile secret, both stored inside environment variables. These are safe as you can't actually read the value of this in any way apart from running the code. So it means that if someone else gets access to your CircleCI, they can't find out your key and secret, which is really useful. Now we need to head back out of this settings environment, go into projects again, find our YouTube series, and we are ready to start building this. We've added the CircleCI/config YAML ourselves. We have done that, so now we can click Start Building. If you have an existing branch, it will actually run the first branch that it finds. So what we need to do is we need to head back into our code and check that we have everything set up. So we have our config YAML, which is using Docker. It checks out the code, installs serverless and npm, runs an install, uses those credentials and then deploys. We're using the serverless project context, and we're only deploying to when a push is made to the L23-CI branch, which is the branch that we're on currently. The last little thing that we need to do is head over to our serverless YAML, and if we scroll down to our table name, we have the player points table. This is going to be a new deployment, so what we need to do is add something onto the end of this to make it unique. Otherwise, when we deploy from CircleCI, there's going to be a conflict between the table that already exists and a new table. So I'm going to call this player points table circle-ci. I then need to copy this, find it everywhere I can, and I'm looking for player points table. There's a couple of instances of it inside our Jest DynamoDB, inside our DynamoDB tests, and inside our player score JSON. So if I now save all of those files and head back to our serverless YAML, this should all work. So now I'm going to git add everything. Before I git add everything, I need to cd down directory so that I'm back in the root of my serverless project. Git add point to add everything. If we now look in our change management, we can see that all of these changes are staged. Git commit -m. And this message can be anything according to your commit message process, but I'm going to say adding CI config and renaming table. Now that I've added all of that, I can git push, set this as a new branch, so git push setting it the upstream. And now we can see that there is a new branch called L23-CI, which is great. So as you can see, this third build has also failed. And if a build fails, you can go into it and actually see that we have spun up the environment, we've installed, we've checked out our credentials, and then in the process of deploying, it said that the My Serverless project bucket already exists. So that just means that the bucket we're trying to deploy already exists because it was in a previous deployment. So what we can do is go back into our code, go down to our serverless YAML. If we scroll down, we can find our bucket name, and we have to change this slightly. So I'm going to change it by adding another 123 onto the end. If we save this, go back into our terminal and add git add dot git status, we can see the only file to change is this file. So git commit -m and a message of changing bucket name and git push. Now that we've pushed this up, we can jump back into our code, click on pipelines, and now we can see that inside our serverless YouTube series, we have just done a new commit called changing bucket name, and that we are rerunning that. This process of getting your project set up for the first time may require you to do quite a few iterations to make sure that everything runs and deploys properly. But once it's up and running, making small changes to code or adding new tables, new S3 buckets and new endpoints should work seamlessly. So I'm going to get back to you once this deploy has finished. So now that deployment has been successful after 2 tries. So what we can do is head into AWS, go to the root of our account, and if we go to Lambda, we can see that we now have My Serverless Project 3, and all of those new files and new endpoints have been created. If we want to access the API endpoint, we can go into our pipelines, go into build and deploy, and scroll down to the SLS deploy process. And this is exactly the same as what you would see inside your terminal if you ran this on your own machine. So we can get the URLs for all of the endpoints. We can also see the functions that we've created. In this video, we have seen how we can use CircleCI to set up continuous integration and deployment of our serverless project. We set up a new project in our CircleCI app. We added some configuration to our app and our repository so that it was configured to deploy every time we pushed to a certain branch. When we did the deployment, we saw that sometimes there can be issues when you first deploy, and we saw when there is an issue in a deployment, how you can find out what the issue was. You can then fix it and get another working deployment set up. By the end of this, we have now got an application where anytime we make a change to that branch of that repo, and push it up, it will make a change to our deployed serverless application. If you've learned something new in this video, it would really help the channel out if you give it a like, as it helps YouTube suggest it to more developers just like yourselves. And if you want to see more videos on serverless and AWS, make sure to hit the subscribe button down here so that you get notified next time I release a video. Thank you, and I'll see you again next time.